Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Muhammadin Sayyidil Mursaleen wa ala alihi ajma'in amma ba'd. Thank you for joining the webinar today. Inshallah, we will be discussing on Islamic social finance concepts. Here we have myself, Yousuf Sultan. I'm heading Sharia and at Ethis Global and COO at Ethis Ventures Malaysia. So today I will be inshallah presenting to you, and we hope that there will be questions. End of the session there will be a Q&A, and before Q&A we will be having another short presentation of case study from Global Sadaqah, one of the Islamic social finance products from Ethis. So Mr. Efran, Brother Efran here will be presenting for GS inshallah. So without further delay, let me head to the presentation that I have for you today. Okay. So as we mentioned before, that we will be today inshallah addressing topics around Islamic social finance. So before we begin the session, I would like to mention what to expect from this session. It's very basic. What we are expecting here is a broad level understanding of Islamic finance tools, Islamic social finance tools. So we will be not covering details of the tools. We will be not covering things that are beyond Islamic social finance concepts. So, for example, Islamic finance contracts or Islamic finance modules, for example. We will be not covering a lot of data, for example, or other reports. So basically, this is like a very basic understanding of the different Islamic social finance tools and concepts that we have in hand. And of course, I believe that once we have the grasp of the very basic understanding of what we mean by Islamic social finance and what are the tools we have in hand, we will be able to apply those in various circumstances and various for various objectives. For example, we can relate, inshallah, to how we can use those concepts for pandemic, during pandemic and post-pandemic period, inshallah. So let's start first, inshallah. So first, I would like to cover a bit about social finance in general. So I was looking into how they define social finance, and this is from Wikipedia. Of course, it's not a credible source for academia, but of course, it can give us a broad level understanding of how they define it. So how I saw it defines is social finance is an approach to managing money which delivers a social dividend and an economic return. So it's about managing a money in a manner that not only gives economic return, but rather also gives a social dividend. So as we can understand from this definition itself, that of course, firstly, there will be two different things. There will be economic return and there will be a social dividend or a social return, I would say, or social impact. Now, the economic return will return back to the financier or not. This definition itself is silent about it. So then the next paragraph that Wiki mentions, now that is more clear. It includes, you can see that it is often used to describe lending and investment. So they include both lending or investment into companies which consider themselves social enterprises, charities, cooperatives, non-profits, and other impact-focused in organizations. So looks like from this definition, they mean both investments, where usually the return would also come to the financier, and also charities, cooperatives or non-profits, usually where the return would not come back to the financier. So this includes both actually. Now furthermore, it also includes several other terminologies that we interchangeably use when it comes to social finance, social investment, impact investment, for example. And one of the most widely used terminology that we use nowadays is socially responsible investing, or SRI. And that is also explained as sustainable finance, green finance or ethical investment, green investment. So as you can see, the terminologies are interchangeably used. And we also have responsible investing, sustainable investing, impact investing even. And finally, one more is microcredit or micro loan, whereby the loans are extended in very small amount to borrowers typically who are not financially included, meaning that they are not part of the formal financial institutions. They do not interact directly with banks or formal financial institutions. So this is a good amount of text, I understand, but I hope that you would appreciate the general understanding and logic behind it, that social finance usually when it is referred to, it means both charity and investment, but of course there will be a social return on top of economic return. Now there is an interesting slide here. This is pulled from a report that I had an opportunity, a privilege actually, to work with the former governor of Central Bank of Malaysia, Tan Sri Dr. Zeti, and Azlin Idris, another former central banker. So this report was titled "Responsible Finance, Ethical and Islamic Finance: Meeting the Global Agenda," and it was published by RFI Foundation in together with IFSB last year. So in this report, what we tried to do is try to find similarities and differences between ethical finance and Islamic finance, to see where ethical finance, ethical investment, SRI, and all those new other types of investment that are mostly common in the West, how those converge with Islamic finance, and what are the similarities and what are the differences. The objective of having this here today to see where Islamic finance actually connects when it comes to social finance. And then we will go to the tools, inshallah. So this slide itself has the similarities. So we can see, so this comes after the detailed report. I would encourage you to read the report. It is publicly available if you search it, inshallah, in RFI's website. So the similarities say that in terms of fairness, there is a similarity. So both ethical finance, for example, impact finance, impact investment, sustainable investment, SRI, all those emphasis on fairness, on transparency to all the stakeholders, so that no fraudulent activities are there, no dishonesty is there, integrity is there, adl and ihsan is there, justice is there. Then comes the transparency, which is again, part of fairness and part of justice, to be clear, to disclose all the relevant information in a manner that does not have ambiguity or does not mislead or prevent stakeholders from making informed decisions. So again, this is part of Islamic finance objective, as well as it comes under the impact finance and ethical finance. Basically, when it comes to ethical finance or impact finance, if you go to the root, it was also faith-based. It was driven by faith. So other faiths, for example, Christianity or other faiths, they came up with this type of concept so that they can exclude things that are unethical from their point of view. So we will go to the differences in the next slide, and it will be much more clear, inshallah. But ultimate objective is to be ethical, to bring social good. So this is where social finance comes in. So when we are doing things ethically, so this is where it gives bigger return or to the society. So the greater good, the similarity here again is beyond profitability. So it's not about only being profitable at the self level, but also ensuring that the finance concept conducted is in a manner consistent with the greater good to the society. So this is where we can see in Islam also, when we will discuss about maqasid, we will see, inshallah, maqasid Sharia, or the objectives of Sharia, addresses the same issue as well. It's not about your personal benefit. It's about the benefit of the society, of the ummah. And we will see that in hadith, our Prophet ﷺ refers a lot that al-Muslimuna kajasadin wahidin, that the Muslims, the ummah, are like one body. So what is the essence of that? Is that we are, whatever activity we do, we have to be concerned about how it impacts others as well in the same society, right? Then treatment of impermissible activities. So this is where the similarity here, the similarity is in terms of the broader objective. So for example, in ethical finance also, we will see that they recommend to cleanse the tainted income for impermissible activities. And then in Islamic finance, we also have haram, for example, or prohibited income, for example, and we have to cleanse our income from those tainted income when it is received by the investor. And then finally, social dimension. Both forms of finance require social considerations in business dealings. Now, if you look at the differences, key differences, we will see that firstly, in terms of faith, must comply with Sharia in Islamic finance because it is completely based on Islamic principles, Sharia principles. Sharia, in the very root, it is basically Quran and Sunnah, and then we will have Ijma, Qiyas, or other istihsan, other concepts which are actually derived from Quran and Sunnah. So, of course, it has to comply with Sharia, and then in ethical finance, it's maybe a criteria to not a necessity, necessarily a requirement, meaning that it may have a criteria to comply with their faith, but it's not a requirement. But in Islamic finance, it's a requirement. Now, this is the most interesting part in the differences. When it comes to ethical finance, when it comes to sustainable finance or impact finance, for example, ethics is a core component of it. Now, what is the foundation of ethics? Where do you get ethics from? How do you determine this is ethical, this is unethical? Who gives the final declaration that this is ethical and this is unethical? Now, when it comes to Islamic finance, it is very straightforward. The entire principle is we are getting from Quran and Hadith as principal sources, then there are other secondary sources as well. But when it comes to ethical finance or other such terminologies, we see that it was initially based on faith, but then principles are continually developed by contemporary communities. So the consequence of this is something that was deemed unethical maybe 100 years ago, maybe it is ethical now, or something that was ethical that time, now maybe it is unethical. But in Islamic finance, we will see things that were unethical before, like hundreds of years ago until the 14th centuries. Now it's unethical as well. It will not be changing until the day of judgment because it is static based on Quran and Sunnah. Of course, there will be interpretations which will be changing according, and that is the flexibility and the beauty of fiqh. And what is harmful, again, this is also, when it comes to Islamic finance, it has strict principles. It is clearly defined what is halal, what is haram, and when it is haram, by default, it will be harmful as well. We have to consider it is harmful, and then we have to exclude it. But then when it comes to ethical finance, again, this is based, continually developed, based on the contemporary communal values. So we'll see non-renewable energy sources, for example, other things that pollute the environment, harmful for the society, which also be excluded. And then it's ensuring strict adherence. In Islamic finance, we will have Sharia governance, for example, to ensure that the principles are properly governed and adhered to. However, in ethical finance, this is not a requirement. There is no such requirement. Then segregation of income, funds, and assets. So we will see that in Sharia, in Islamic finance, it is a strict requirement that both funds are not commingled, rather the funds are segregated and then invested and utilized separately. But that's not the case in ethical finance. And in terms of forms of social finance, if we look at forms of social finance, in Islamic finance, we will have charitable tools, for example, Zakat, Sadaqah, and Waqf, and must not be used to make personal profit or self-profit. So that's entirely given to the society. And in ethical finance, charitable elements can be used to make profit as well. So that's the difference. And this is where now we will go to the next slide for Islamic social finance. Okay, before going to Islamic social finance, there is one or two more slides on maqasid and SDD. So what I tried to do in this slide is, just to remind, have a quick glimpse of the 5 maqasid or principle of maqasid Sharia or objectives of Sharia. So what we want to say here is that the social finance concepts, or the concept of giving good back to the society, this is inherent in our maqasid Sharia. So, for example, the objectives of 5 core objectives of Sharia are defined as, firstly, hifz al-aql, or preserve of intellect; hifz al-deen, preservation of faith; hifz al-mal, preservation of wealth; then hifz of nafs, preservation of life; and then hifz of nasab, preservation of lineage. So these 3, the wealth, life and lineage actually, if we further extend it, we will see that it actually includes most of the things that bring social welfare or benefit to the society. And these are the SDG, or Sustainable Development Goals by United Nations, and we can see most of those actually are well aligned with the maqasid of Sharia as well. Okay, so let's go to the Islamic social finance tool. So what we try to discuss so far is that social finance, in conventional terminology, is a concept where it brings economic return and also social return. Now, the economic return can be returned to the financier itself or the funder itself, himself, or it can go back to the back to charity. When it comes to Islamic social finance tools, we will be exploring few of the tools that is proposed by Sharia, including Sadaqah, Zakat, and Waqf, and inshallah we'll see how that benefits the society. Now, what I tried to do in this slide is going back to the very basic. Now, when it comes to Sadaqah, Sadaqah can be termed as any type of good, that we do to anyone. For example, even a smile. Tabassumuka fi wajhi akhika sadaqah. Our Prophet ﷺ said that even your smile at the face of your brother is considered a sadaqah. Then even, saying good words or giving good suggestions, good recommendations to someone else is also considered a form of sadaqah. So sadaqah is even broader. Any type of good deeds where we intend to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our Lord the Almighty, can be considered sadaqah. But when we use sadaqah in terms of Islamic social finance or Islamic finance, we mean financial sadaqah. So this is where I try to segregate between non-financial and financial. So non-financial is limitless. There can be thousands of ways to make sadaqah every day, every moment. And when it comes to financial sadaqah, so this is where we have few different types of tools. So we can see there is general sadaqah, so that the sadaqah which is not obligatory, which is where there is no intention to make it perpetual, or it has not been made formal to make it perpetual, and it's not meant to get back. So it's given as a charity, it's given as a one-off, and that's what general sadaqah is. And then we have obligatory sadaqah, which is zakat. So we'll be discussing a bit about zakat as well. And then we have perpetual sadaqah, a sadaqah which is meant to be perpetual, which is meant to be a long time one. So that's what waqf is. And then we have benevolent loan, which is Qard Hasan, where no interest is, no interest will be provided or given to the loan giver or to the lender. So we will inshallah explore those 4 tools inshallah in the coming slides. So the primary principle of sadaqah is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Al-Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 276, يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَى وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. Allah destroys riba and gives increase for charities, or increase charities. Now, when it comes to financial numbers, literal numbers, we will see that when we give out sadaqah, it actually decreases the numbers, right? We are spending money. When it comes to balance sheet, for example, when it comes to cash flow statement or profit and loss statement, for example, we'll see there is expenditure. We are giving out something. The money is not entering into our account. We are giving out. But Allah subhanahu and in riba, when it comes to interest that we earn, na'uzubillah, of course we don't earn interest. Let's say if someone earns interest from someone, from a loan or from any other thing that he has invested in, that interest literally increases the numbers in his balance sheet, in his profit and loss statement, in his cash flow statement, or whatever other statement it is. So literally, riba increases the numbers, and charity, sadaqah, decreases the numbers. Whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying exactly the opposite. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yamhaqu, He wipes out, He destroys riba. So anything earned from riba, He destroys it completely. And sadaqat, on the other hand, yurbi, He increases. So what happens actually when we give out sadaqah and zakat? When we give sadaqah and zakat, even though literally it decreases, the barakah of it increases. The blessing of it increases. Blessing is something that we don't see it. We cannot touch it. It's not tangible. But it is there. It is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is what driven by our faith, our iman, our aqidah. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there to bless us, there is no one to take out that blessing from us. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there to increase our risk, there is no one in this world who can decrease our risk. On the contrary, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreases our risk, there is no one who can increase our risk. So that's the basic tenet of faith, of aqidah, of iman that we have. Now, if we focus at this verse is not only recommending, but kind of forcing us to give charities if we want to increase our wealth. So it is, in other words, saying, see, what is the shortcut to be a wealthy person? Give charities. You will see today we have a lot of books, we have a lot of motivational speeches, this and that, how to become a millionaire. So this is the shortcut to become a millionaire. If you want to become a millionaire, give $1 million to Zakat, give $1 million to charity. That's the shortcut Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. It's very clear cut, no interpretation is needed. Khalas. So anyway, if from this verse we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us about charities, sadaqat. And as I mentioned in the discussion in the previous slide, that sadaqah can be monetary, can be non-monetary, it can be financial, non-financial, and financial or monetary sadaqat could be of 3 types, basically zakat, waqf, and sadaqah. But we also include Qard Hasan here. Why? Inshallah, we will be explaining. Now, zakat, what it is. We know about it, alhamdulillah, right? But still, I will be giving a very brief understanding of it. So zakat literally means growth. Zakat means increase. Zakat means purification. So as I mentioned, it grows our wealth, it increases our wealth in terms of barakah, rather in terms of literal numbers as well. I remember when I was a khatib in Bangladesh, in a masjid for 5 years, alhamdulillah. And for the first few khutbahs, I gave a series lecture on zakat. And I was emphasizing on this barakah part, that there will be barakah, there will be increase in zakat. And alhamdulillah, thereafter that a musalli, a person came in and he shared his personal experience, and he said, Yusuf, I have this experience. I literally see my wealth growing years after years, year to year, even though I'm paying zakat. And I know my elder brother, his wealth is not increasing. He's seeing an increase, and then every now and then he becomes sick. He has to spend a lot of money going to the other countries and all those things. And I see he's always kind of feeling that he has no wealth. And alhamdulillah, I'm happy. So he always used to share this experience whenever I used to lecture on zakat. He passed away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him Jannah al-Firdaus. So even though I'm saying that it is a barakah, it is a growth of blessing, but there are personal experiences where people would say that they see literal increase of their wealth. Anyway, so zakat is an annual obligatory upon Muslims. Of course, there will be certain criteria. There will be a minimum threshold of wealth that we have to maintain. The person has to have. And after that, once one lunar year completes, after the first time he is having that amount of wealth, 2.5%, inshallah, he will have to give as zakah. So this is a very important worship, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it in Al-Quran in various verses alongside salah. Like for example, he mentioned aqimus salah wa atu zakah. Aqimus salah wa atu zakah. Establish prayer and also give zakah. Okay, so this shows the significance of zakah in terms of being an ibadah. And also in Sahih al-Bukhari, the very famous hadith that we know, for example, whereby our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions Bunya al-Islamu ala khamsin, that Islam has 5 pillars. So one of the 5 pillars is Ita'u zakah, giving zakah. And these are the very basic conditions. As I mentioned, I will not go deeper into it, but just giving a glimpse of it, that zakah is obligatory on a person who has a minimum zakatable wealth. And minimum zakatable wealth could be considered in 2 different forms. I mean, it can be valued at 2 different metals. One is gold and another is silver. So in terms of gold, it could be valued at 85 grams of pure gold. or equivalent currencies or articles of trade. And in terms of silver, it is 595 grams of pure silver. So someone who has either wealth, of course, zakatable wealth or zakatable asset amounting to this minimum threshold, uh, then he will be considered that he has this nisab, he has this minimum zakatable wealth. And the second condition is that since he becomes first time the owner of this amount of wealth, there has to be at least one howl. Howl is one lunar year. Howl means one lunar year. So approximately it would be 354 days, not 365 days. That's solar year, but in lunar year it's around 354 days. So after 354 days, he would see and calculate that if he has that minimum amount of wealth or not. If he has that minimum amount of wealth, then he has to take out 2.5% of it as zakat. Of course, after deducting liabilities, which I am not detailing in this today's session. Okay, so these are glimpse of zakatable assets. I will just go through very quickly. The first one is any liquid asset or easy to liquidate asset, which includes cash in hand, gold and silver in any form, bank balances. By the way, gold and silver, there are ikhtilaf, a variety of opinion among scholars. So some would say that any form of gold and silver is zakatable. Some would say only that are, gold and silver that are used for personal usage would be excluded from zakat. So I'm not going to into that details. And then cash includes bank balances, which includes current account, savings account, even investment accounts, which are easy to liquidate. Then we have bonds, sukuk, investment sukuk, investment funds, and all those things. So what we have to do, we have to take the balance on the howl, on the zakat date, and see how much we own on that date. And then second category of zakatable asset is articles of trade. By articles of trade, we mean in a very simple manner, anything that was intended to, that was purchased, that was purchased with the intention to sell. So let's say I purchase something with the intention that I will sell it after some time when the price goes up. So that would be considered article of trade. And of course, it would be acquired through buying or otherwise. Now, how would we value it? Usually, it should be valued at the selling market price in the place where they exist, and according to the method of their sale. For example, retail or wholesale or both. So I will not go to the further details. That's what articles of trade is. So those are the two major categories of zakatable assets. I didn't include here crops and also livestock, because for crops and livestock, there is a different methodology. You can refer to IOFI Sharia standard, for example, which is publicly available in iofi.com. The detailed calculations of how the zakat would be on crops and also other types of zakatable assets is there. Okay, so how a person calculates zakat? So once he gets the total zakatable assets, of course, valued in a single currency, so he gets the total nominal value, and he sees that he meets the minimum threshold, which is nisab, and also one howl is already passed through, and still he owns that wealth, that amount of wealth, that minimum amount of wealth. So after that, he would be deducting all the liabilities. Now the liabilities would include things that he have to pay immediately, or maybe he took some loan, he borrowed something and he has to pay back, and those are due in next one lunar year. This is a very important point. I don't have the details in this presentation today, but inshallah, maybe in another session we can discuss this. Only things that are due in next one lunar year will be deducted from here if it's a long-term loan or long-term debt. So once we deduct those liabilities, we get the total zakah base. Total zakah base is the total amount of total value of zakatable assets after deducting the liabilities. Once we get the total zakah base, we get 2.5% of it to pay zakah. Now the notable point here is the wealth that is obtained from haram sources. For example, from interest. For example, from maybe in some countries they call it speed money, or bribery, for example, or any other sources of, haram sources for selling haram products, for example, wine, pork, and all those haram products. So any haram money, any haram wealth, we have to dispose it 100%. So it's not that we just give 2.5% out of it and it becomes halal. It never becomes halal. The only way to make it halal is to just give it 100%. Now, where should we give it? Either we give it to the actual owner, So let's say we know the actual owner of this money or this wealth or this asset is someone, then we go back and we say sorry and we give back. And then we also make tawbah, repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the way to make tawbah when it comes to haqqul ibad, the rights of human being. If we violate any rights of human being, that's the way to make tawbah. If we don't know who is that someone, or let's say if it's a public money, it's a bribery, it's a misuse of public funds, government funds, for example, sovereign funds and this and that, then we have to disburse it to a charity. And that charity or that disbursement should not directly or indirectly benefit me in any way. For example, I should not be giving charity out of it for the reason that I will be called a very charitable person, a very pious person in my society. No, it should be silent and just disposed away, because I'm not the owner of that money. How can I gain any sort of popularity or any material benefit out of it? No way. So it has to be disposed of 100%. Then only it can become. I mean, it cannot become, but the other funds will be protected as halal. And finally, when it comes to disbursement of zakah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned 8 categories in Surah Tawbah in Al-Quran, and those are the 8 categories. We know about them, so I will not be elaborating on those. So this is a very simple process flow of zakah. We have eligible person, we have someone who has that amount of wealth, and that is amounting to nisab for the very first time. And then after 1 year, 1 lunar year, he calculates zakat. So all those things that apply, that I mentioned in the previous slides apply. Then he takes out 2.5% of it. And then the next step is very crucial. He identifies the recipients according to the permissible categories that I mentioned in the previous slide. So once the recipients are identified, then he can disperse accordingly. So this is a very simple process for zakat. Now let's go to Waqf. So as I mentioned in a very first few slides, that Waqf is a charity, is a Sadaqah, where perpetuity is intended. So for example, in Arabic, literally Waqf means habs. Habs means to prevent something from movement, to make it stuck, to prevent it from moving, from any type of movement. In Sharia, Waqf refers to making a property prevented from movement, meaning that it will be invulnerable to any disposition that leads to transfer of ownership, meaning that will be protected. That property will not be sold, will not be transferred to anyone else. Rather, the usufruct of it, the benefit or the income of it, will go to the beneficiaries. This is how IOFI defined. This is from IOFI Sharia standard on Waqf. You can go through it. So in other words, Waqf is all about donating a property. So now what type of property, inshallah, in the next slide we'll see. So donating a property or an asset, but not making it available to be transferred to someone, right? And then utilizing its usufruct or the income. So meaning that the property should be generating some sort of income, either by renting it out or by any other. It can be an investment as well. The usufruct derived from it, the income derived from it, should go to the beneficiaries. Now, who are the beneficiaries? I have a slide for that as well. Now, let's see what are the different types of Waqf. Again, it is taken from IOFI Sharia standard. You can go through it for details. So there are particularly 4 types of Waqf we can say. First is Waqf al-Khairi, which is charitable Waqf. So all those types, by the way, are defined by the end beneficiary. So in other words, these Waqf types are the types of end beneficiaries for which the Waqf is named to. So for example, Waqf al-Khairi, which is charitable Waqf. In this case, Khairi means charity. So the Waqf is intended for a charitable purpose. So what will happen is, once I donate a property for Waqf, the property is retained, but the benefit goes to a charitable cause or a charity, for example. It can be a particular charity. It can be a charitable cause. It can be defined in different manners, no problem. By the way, one of the principles for which Waqf is highly recommended is the hadith where Prophet ﷺ mentions, إِذَا مَاتَ الْإِنسَانِ إِنْقَطَعَ عَنْهُ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. When a person dies, all of his actions stops. I mean, he is not eligible to make any new action, to do any rewarding thing, right? Except for 3, إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. And one of the 3 is Sadaqah Jariyah. A Sadaqah that is continued, that is continual. Now, how can a sadaqah continue even after the person dies? So this is what the instrument is. This is waqf. So even when I pass this world away, I will still see the benefit or the reward coming from it until the waqf is alive. So anyway, the second type of waqf is waqf al-ahli or family waqf. Usually this type of waqf is intended for the family, meaning that let's say I have a property and I donate it, but I mentioned that this the benefit or the usufruct of this property will be for my family itself. Now I can further define or specify who I intend as family members. So this can be further defined by the waqif or the waqf keeper. Then we have waqf al-mushtarak, which is mushtarak means joint, common. So this type of waqf is intended to have two different types of beneficiaries. For example, it can be having a family, also it can be having a charity. So let's say I have this property and I want the usufruct or the income of this property to be shared 50-50 between my family and this charity. So whenever there is an income, it will be shared 50-50 or according to the proportion that has been mentioned by the waqif. And the last part is waqaf ala an-nafs, whereby an-nafs means self, where the person or the waqif makes the waqaf on himself. How it works is that, let's say I have a property, I want to make it waqaf, but I know that I don't have any other property, for example, and I need that. So what I would say is that this property is waqaf on myself, meaning that I would be getting the usufruct or income until I am dead, until I pass away. So until I'm alive, I will get the income, and then when I pass away, when I'm dead, then the income go to certain charity or family or whatever I mentioned. So this is another way to make waqf, whereby the person still enjoys the usufruct or income during his life, but after he is dead, the charity is sadaqah jariyah is continued. Now the different types of properties that we can make waqf. The first one is of course real estate, and this is one of the most done waqf because when it started waqf the practice, initially the Sahaba, the companions, they would make, for example, the whole gardens, the date gardens or palm. I mean, they would make it waqf. Or maybe, for example, we also have a tradition where we see that one of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made a well, water well, entirely waqf for anyone who wants to drink water. So this is firstly the most prominent type of property that we can do waqf, and it can have permanent furnitures or fittings, whatever. And then the second category is movable assets. So we can make, for example, a car waqf, whereby the car would be retained and maintained, and it would be rented, for example, and the income would be given to the charities. So this is what one of the example of movable assets. Now, where the perpetuity comes in, the perpetuity here is actually extended until the perpetuity of the asset itself. It may be not as perpetual as real estate, but still it has a longevity compared to one-time donation, where I'm just giving out some funds one time to some beneficiary. So this has a long-term effect, giving out a movable asset as a waqf. Next is cash money or any type of liquid asset, whereby the principal is retained, meaning that, for example, it is invested in somewhere, and the principal itself is not donated or not given to anyone. Rather, the profit derived from it would be given to the beneficiaries, as we mentioned in the previous slide. And then we can also make shares and sukuk, for example. We can make certain shares that we hold, we own, we can make it waqf, and then any dividend derived from that shares, any profit derived from that shares or sukuk would be given to the beneficiaries. Now we can be very creative. See, I mean, the underlying logic of this waqf is it is exactly sadaqah. However, the difference is in sadaqah we give just money to anyone for one-off, but in waqf we want it to be sustainable. We want to make it a bit longer for a longer term. So we can be creative around it. For example, we have a restaurant. We can make one of the tables, restaurant tables, as waqf, for example. So any income derived from it would be given to the beneficiaries, certain beneficiaries. Let's say we have airlines, right? And there is planes. We have a certain number of planes, and let's say we make work of one row or two rows, and any amount derived from it will be given to the beneficiaries. Similarly, if we have any types of other types of asset that can be rented out, that can generate any income or profit, we can make portion of it Waqf. This is highly encouraged, and this is a small step we all should take so that inshallah we can make bigger steps someday. All right, so this is a typical process flow of how Waqf works. So the Waqif, a person who intends to make Waqf, he makes the intention and he identifies the property and identifies the beneficiaries, what would be the property that he wants to make work of, and who are the beneficiaries that are intended. Then, of course, he will have some conditions also stipulated. And then finally, he makes the waqf, and then waqf property is retained. This is very important. Waqf property will be retained. And while it is made available to make yields or income out of it, and when income is derived, then it goes to waqf beneficiaries in terms of income or usufruct. Very, very simple as seen in this slide. Last tool of Islamic social finance we wanted to discuss is Qard Hasan. So few things I will discuss. I know I'm running almost out of time. So firstly, Qard Hasan, Hasan means a good loan. Hasan, Qard is loan, Hasan is good loan. Why it's a good loan? Because the intention from this loan is to bring good to someone. The intention is not to oppress him, not to exploit him for his condition. So in other words, we don't want any interest or any excess in terms of giving this loan. Rather, we want to do a good to someone, and of course, he will return the same to me. There is 2 or 3 verses in Al-Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions similar concept. Man zalladhi yuqridu Allah qardan hasana. Who is there to give Qard Hasan to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can we give Qard Hasan to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? By giving Qard Hasan to the people who are in dire need. There are people who may not want to take zakah, who may not want to take charity. They just want Qard Hasan. Today, when we are able to generate profit out of cash, we see the culture of giving Qard Hasan is almost not there. Whenever someone asks for Qard Hasan, we either look for, do we have the zakat fund? If not, can we give as a charity? If not, then can it earn a cash profit? And if it's a no to all those questions, then we just have to say no. That's typically in most cultures around the globe. But in our concept, in Islamic concept, what we see in one side, our Prophet ﷺ is cautioning us about taking unnecessary loans. For example, there are incidents, there are traditions which says that when a janaza, a dead body came to our Prophet ﷺ, and he denied to pray janaza for them. He told others to pray janaza. When? Why? He asked, alayhi daynun, does he have any loan? Does he have any debt on him? And when the answer was yes, he denied to pray janaza. When someone said, okay, I will bear the responsibility of paying back his loan, I will be the kafil, be the guarantor, then he agreed. So in one side, he was cautioning us, he was discouraging us to take unnecessary loans. Today we have a lot of credit cards and this and that. We just take loans whenever we want, even though we don't need it. But on the other hand, if someone is there who is in dire need, who needs some cash, and he has no other means to take that from, so we are encouraged to give Qard Hasan. Man zalladhi yuqridu Allah qardan hasana. Now, few clauses, few important elements of Qard Hasan we have to remember. This is again taken from Ayofi Sharia standard on Qard. So one of the things is that any stipulation of access for the lender in the loan is prohibited. Now, this access can be in terms of quality, in terms of quantity. It can be tangible, it can be intangible or a benefit. It can be determined during the contract, after the contract, during when the contract was signed or after the contract was signed. It can be in stipulation in writing, it can be stipulation verbally, it can be even stipulation or part of customary practice. So in other words, during the loan period, any terms, any type of access, any access on the loan in terms of anything, any benefit could be considered as riba. Now, there is one clause in IOFE as well. Let's say someone has been giving some sort of benefit to some person for a long term. And in the, I mean, suddenly he is also giving a qard to the same person, and he still continues to give the same benefit to that person. Sorry, my example should be opposite. So someone, let's say someone is giving a benefit to other person. Let's say Rashid. Rashid is always giving some sort of benefit or some sort of gift, for example, to Khalid, and it has been quite a for a long time. And suddenly Rashid is in need of some money. He asks Khalid, and Khalid gives him Qard Hasan. And Rashid still continues to give that benefit to Khalid. That will not be considered as an access to this Qard Hasan, because this is some sort of benefit that he has been doing it even before extending the Qard Hasan. So that will not be riba. But any kind of excess or any kind of benefit that is coming in relation to this qard during or after, I mean, during the period of qard, will be considered riba. However, if any excess is not specified in terms of anything, quality, or I mean anything, but and there was no customary practice as well, there was no expectation as well, and after the qard was repaid, the borrower gives some excess in terms of benefit or whatever, then it will be permissible. But to be honest, this is very impractical and very rare. So it is suggested, and it will be wise for any of us who is giving Qard Hasan to give is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and only to expect the return from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a very typical process of Qard Hasan is that there is a lender and there is a borrower. It's just two parties. And the lender gives let's say 10,000 USD on date X, and the borrower can, I mean, they can have a defined date. It's always best to have a defined date, or they may not be defining the date. And wherever the borrower pays back, he pays back the exact amount. So no excess is given. So that's a typical process flow of Qard Hasan. Now, once we have gone through all the different tools of Islamic social finance, now let's just have a quick overview of how and what tools we can use during and post pandemic. So we have if we look at the Quran, there was a pandemic, not pandemic actually, there was a drought mentioned during the time of Yusuf alayhi salam in Misr, in Egypt. I mean, it was broader than Egypt, but it was mentioned in Misr. And also we know that there was a drought and also kind of pandemic or epidemic during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the second caliph of Islam. What we see similar or common in during those two periods is that both of them, Yusuf alayhi salam and also Umar radiallahu anhu, they organized food charity for the poor. Who, for example, Yusuf alayhi salam, he organized, he actually well planned almost before 7 years. If you remember, if you recall from Al-Quran, he saw the Aziz of Misr, or the governor of Misr, he saw a dream, and then Yusuf alayhi salam interpreted it, and then it included well planning and all those things, and then he planned and he stocked food for 7 years, and then he dispersed it as a charity to people who are around Misr. And during Umar radiallahu an, people who are outside Medina, he arranged food for them as well. Because during pandemic, first thing people need is, of course, if it is a health-related drought or a health-related pandemic, of course, health is the first priority. But secondly, they have to be alive. So food is the second one. Now, if you look at the current pandemic, which is caused by a health, and then it is also causing us other economic and other issues, we can categorize that two types of needs. So one is immediate needs. So we have some immediate needs to fulfill right away, and there are long-term needs. So immediate needs could be, I mean, for poor or for low to middle income, for example. For poor, we can extend Zakat or Sadaqah. So it's a one-off charity. We can give to them to maintain their cash flow or maintain the minimum basic needs they have for food or health or whatever. And for the low-income people who may or may not be eligible for Zakah, so we can also give them Sadaqah. If they are eligible, we can give them Zakah. If they are not eligible and still they need cash and we have no other funds, we can extend to them Qard Hasan. This is on individual level, on society level, and even on the country level or regional level as well. Qard Hasan can be a very good instrument during this time of pandemic. I mean, if other instruments are not available. And to fulfill long-term needs in terms of health, education, and other public welfare, Waqf is the best tool. We really need to emphasize on Waqf. There has been a lot of Waqf properties and Waqf assets from the beginning of Islamic era, and a lot of those were destroyed during colonialism of Muslim countries around the globe. I don't want to go there, but now it's time to revive back, to double up our Waqf for the next generation, for our children, for our grandchildren, so that we uphold the duty of care for the ummah, for the humanity. So this is how we can see the alignment of Islamic social finance during and post-pandemic, right? So that's what I wanted to share with all of you. Hope it was quite brief, but we wanted it to be a very broad level understanding. Inshallah, if there is further interest, we can continue this series focusing on each of those Islamic social finance instrument and further going into more details. So with that, I will finish my session, inshallah. I will pass to Brother Ifran to present a case study on a digital form of extending this Sadaqah Zakat to through our crowdfunding platform. Brother Ifran, the mic is
Thank you.
yours. Thank you.
Can I share my screen, please? Brother Mugi?
Sure. Just 1 second.
Right.
Yes, brother.
So, is it visible to everyone? Yep. Can we see my screen?
Yes, yes. Can you
Okay.
turn on your camera as well, brother?
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, so I'll begin. All right?
Yes, yes, sure.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Good evening and thank you, everyone. So before we open for questions, I would like to share the following. As Mufti Yousuf has shared, there are many avenues to get involved in Islamic social finance. And there are many organizations out there with, for example, CSR funds to channel to recipients. And these organizations also would like to showcase their activities, for example, to gain more support from the public, for the public to get involved. And at the same time, there are also many generous individuals out there who are looking for places to donate for Waqf and to channel their Zakat. But the problem today is there is a lack of trust and transparency. And this is what we've been seeing across the board, in fact, in many countries. So the Global Sadaqah team puts in the extra effort to filter and select out, select our charity partners. And with that, we have gained the trust of our supporters simply for the extra effort we put in. And with regular updates, which we provide for campaigns, it immediately addresses the ongoing concerns for transparency in this space. So there is something for everyone, organizations, individuals, the whole ecosystem, inshallah. And I just want to share, and I'll make it quite brief. So here are just some snapshots of our ongoing campaigns. And these are many options for you to build your Sadaqah Jariyah. I invite all of you, if you have the time, after the talk, after the questions and answers, to just visit our website, globalsadaqah.com. And with that, you can find the right campaign for you, or in fact, maybe we can help you build your own campaign. So in line with this, which we could probably elaborate in another session, inshallah, we have also launched something related to what Mufti Yousuf has shared. We have launched our Qard Hasan program. So regular charity funds, as Mufti Yousuf have mentioned earlier, they're usually given out on a one-off basis. So through this Qard Hasan program, what we intend to achieve is with that same amount, we'll have the potential to give and have a bigger impact and help more people. Inshallah, that's the plan. Because as mentioned in the earlier slides, when the recipients repay the Qard Hasan, the funds will be channeled to the next group of beneficiaries, and the cycle will continue and continue and continue, inshallah. So with that, we look forward to your support and working with you and your organizations. And that's my brief introduction on Global Sadaqah. Thank you, and back to you, Mufti.
Thank you, Brother Ifran. Can you make me host again?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so we have, thank you, Brother Ifran.
Welcome.
So to summarize what Brother Ifran has presented, it's a product, Global Sadaqah, under the Ethis group, and we are doing Islamic social finance, and namely Zakat, Sadaqat, and also some Waqf, and across the globe. So please go to globalsadaqah.com, sign up and make your first donation. So there are different avenues you can automate even your sadaqah, and there are interesting things coming up, inshallah. Okay, so inshallah we will take some questions. What we'll do, inshallah, we will go through some questions that we have on hand, and maybe after we finish the questions, we can also allow a few questions to be mentioned verbally. So there are quite a number of questions we received before the webinar during registration, and mashallah, some good questions are there, and there are some questions which are here we have in our in this webinar. Okay, so maybe I will just start with some questions that we received from our form. Okay, so one of the questions we received, for example, what is the outlook of the Sharia economy in a pandemic like this? So I think this is a very relevant question today, and we are living in a pandemic, and as research says, maybe we have to live up with it for quite some time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease our situation for our brothers and sisters in all over the world. However, as I shared in the second last slide, that the tools that we have for Islamic social finance can help us to contribute for the economy during and post pandemic different manners. So all those tools we can use in the government level, for example, in the society level. We can even do microfinance, for example. Using those programs, we can have Qard Hasan, we can have Zakat and Waqf. It just needs proper mobilization and distribution. So mobilization and distribution would require, it's best, I mean, there has to be trust and transparency so that people have trust on it, and people find it helpful and to channel the donations. Yeah, that's how I see it. Brother Ifran, you can always add if you want to add something. So the question was how we can see that Islamic social finance can contribute during this pandemic. Please feel free to add anytime you want.
Yeah, just to add on, because we have definitely seen on our platform, especially during the whole COVID period, especially the early months of the lockdown, simply because a lot of people are not able to give out their donations physically. So through our platform, we were definitely able to address that, and through many things we had, like help locally in Malaysia, of course. We even had assistance all the way for countries as far as Nigeria. So yes, this is where Islamic social finance definitely fill in the gap during this whole pandemic period.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Ifran. Yeah, Global Sadaqah really did a good job, and we hope that more will continue, inshallah. Okay, so there was one question from Muhammad Fairuz from Singapore. In the context of a lender of microfinance in Qard Hasan schemes, number one, what would be the acceptable duration for full repayment of loans for amounts up to SGD 10,000? Now, for Qard Hasan schemes, the acceptable duration, it depends. It depends on the type of recipient and the type of activity or the type of usage the borrower would use it for. It can range from any amount, any duration from 3 months until 1 year or even more. So I think there is no straightforward answer to that. And then question number two is, if a borrower is late on loan repayment, what actions can the lender take? So in terms of Qard Hasan, we know that we cannot take any penalty, or we cannot charge any access. However, there can be different ways to make sure that the person pays the loan back, and those are not so different than what conventional people do. Only thing is, we have to always exercise the concept of ihsan or excellence, so that no zulm is done, and it can be subjective from situation to situation. So I would better leave it to you. And then number three is, if a borrower defaults on repayment, what actions can the lender take? Again, it's almost the same answer I would give. So we can resort to the available options that we have on conventional counterpart, The only thing is, if any penalty is to be charged, firstly, we cannot charge. If there is anything to charge and we see that, let's say there is no other way, then the penalty must be disbursed to charity. It cannot be counted as part of income for the lender, because Qard Hasan cannot be, I mean, from the very beginning, if we impose a penalty, so that's what riba is. But if there is a penalty on default, again, it's a riba, and we cannot, it has to be go to charity. Okay, so there is another question from Mr. Fadil Muhammad, Indonesia. In doing business regarding Islamic social finance, how can we ensure all of our business aspect is Sharia compliant? Okay, this is a very important aspect when it comes to Islamic social finance. Islamic part is one of the core component of this Islamic social finance terminology. So it has to be compliant with Sharia principles, and to make it compliant with Sharia principles, of course, there has to be proper Sharia governance. The minimum requirement for Sharia governance is to have Sharia advisor, either in-house, or there are many Sharia advisory companies today as well in various countries. In Indonesia, I'm sure you will find as well. In Malaysia, there are other countries as well. There are individuals also who do Sharia advisory for those stuff. So once you have the products endorsed by them, then it would be a periodic audit, Sharia audit by the Sharia advisors or the Sharia committee. So that shouldn't be a big issue, inshallah. Okay, so let me take some question from here as well. Assalamu alaikum. How Islamic social finance can be a major source of sustainable development or well-being? So Islamic social finance, if we look at those four principles, those are all charities, or where we have economic return and social return, but the return is not coming back to the person himself. But the broader concept of social finance, as we discussed in the very beginning, whereby a social return and economic return is intended, it can also be extended to investments. So for example, we can also invest for the social good. So we can have economic return, and we can also have social impacts on our investments. And that could be aligned with the sustainability metrics, so that it is impactful, it is sustainable, and also it brings us economic returns. This is how I see it, and I think we at Ethis, we are also mostly focused on impact investments and ethical investments, sustainable investments, apart from the Islamic social finance part that we do on global Sadaqah. Okay, then there is one question on Waqf. Can I Waqf property to non-Muslim by writing will? I don't see there is any restriction on that. There can be beneficiaries, as long as beneficiaries are defined, should be fine. Okay, for Waqf ala nafs, property must be less than 1/3 of total wealth. This is a question by Asma Ahmed. For Waqf ala nafs, where we mention that the Waqf is intended for the person, should that be less than 1/3 of the wealth, total wealth? This is a good question actually. Actually, when we do wasiya, for wasiya, this is the rule, that it has to be 1/3 or less of the wealth. So if it is more than 1/3 of the wealth, then it will be capped at 1/3 of the wealth. So it cannot go beyond that. But when it comes to Waqf, we haven't come across such restriction. So a person can do a Waqf even more than that. Of course, it is recommended that we also leave properties for our heirs, for our children, for people who will have the properties by Sharia after we passed away, because there is a hadith where Prophet ﷺ mentions that it is good for you to leave your kids, not as beggars, for example, so that they don't have to ask others for help. They are also self-sustainable. Okay, there is another question by the same sister with Qard Hasan. Does term of loan need to be stipulated? Can this be reviewed? Qard Hasan, the only requirement is there should be no excess in return. Now, in terms of term, it is of course recommended to stipulate it, but it's not a requirement. And of course, it can be reviewed. There is a verse in Al-Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَإِنْ كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ. When someone is in hardship, it is good to give him a chance, or extend him until he has good times. So when someone is really in a problem and is unable to pay back, it's good to review and arrange a longer period. Okay, so we have another question from Vahbi Zikri. Is it permissible to use zakat money to provide Qard Hasan loans, having in consideration that these loans are revolving, paying back and offering new loans to other clients? I think almost same thing we are going to do in Global Sadaqah, Brother Ifran. So the question is it permissible to use zakat money to provide Qard Hasan? So basically, when it comes to zakat money, it has to reach the beneficiaries. And the reaching of it is, I mean, it has to reach one off. I mean, we cannot make it like payback. It has to go directly. I mean, the transfer of ownership has to happen. And when the transfer of ownership happens, it shouldn't be returned back, because when we say it has to be returned back, then the transfer of ownership has not happened. So in other words, the zakat money cannot be provided as Qard Hasan loans. If it is utilized for some investment, there are some structures proposed by some modern scholars, but again, it is highly it has various opinions from the scholars, because until and unless it is finally transferred to the beneficiaries, it will be not counted as zakah. So let's see, if I use zakah money to give Qard Hasan, okay, then the person gives me the Qard Hasan back. Still, the zakat is not completed. So to answer your question in one word, I think it's best to not structure zakah with Qard Hasan. Even if we do, then it has to be have a definitive timeline until when it will be finally disbursed to the beneficiaries. How can people get access to Qard Hasan? Which organizations provide Qard Hasan to Ummah? Jamil Abbas asked this question. This is a very good question. We really lack organizations who provide Qard Hasan, and this could be due to many reasons. But I believe that we can really streamline the process, and we can use the technology, etc., to break the barriers that are there to provide Qard Hasan. So what we can do is, to answer your question, there are few organizations. There is an organization called Ahwa in Pakistan, and I know them. They are extending Qard Hasan, and I'm sure there are a few others, and inshallah we can have many more. Well, there are a lot of questions, mashallah, and we definitely cannot go through all the questions. Inshallah, what we can do, we will try to answer those questions one by one after this session through email or through our Facebook post or through different mediums, inshallah. With that, we will try to, inshallah, conclude this session. But if Ifran, you want to share any final words before we conclude?
Well, just to add on to the list of organizations providing Qard Hasan, as mentioned earlier, since we have recently launched our Qard Hasan program, so inshallah we'll be one of those organizations who will also be providing Qard Hasan to those who need it in the future, inshallah. That's the plan.
Inshallah. We are really excited about it, and please follow Global Sadaqah. Inshallah, there will be much more to come, inshallah. So with that, we will try to close this session today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jazakumullah khairan, for attending this webinar and being so interactive, asking so many questions. As I said, inshallah, we are due to shortage of time, we couldn't answer all the questions, but inshallah, definitely we will look into it, and we will try to answer those gradually, inshallah. May Allah keep you safe and sound. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.